Hello and welcome to you. I hope you've been enjoying a terrific week filled with great music and lots of fun. As you'd be well aware, some of the biggest names from the 60s, 70s and 80s are passing away too soon. A factor, I guess, of living the rock and roll lifestyle, but sad nonetheless. That's why I've made it my thing to capture as many of them as I can before it's too late, to provide an opportunity for them to tell their own stories in their own voices. The Turtles drummer Johny Barbata, who played on more than 100 albums and on 20 hit singles, is one of these guys. John passed away recently, having made music throughout his life with bands like the Turtles, Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship. I thought I'd bring you the interview I recorded with him recently to honour his music and his memory. Johny Barbata, great to have you on A Breath of Fresh Air. You've had an amazing career. It started way back in the 60s, didn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit, because your first form of notoriety was actually nothing to do with music?
Well, that's not exactly true. I would play with the Sentinels in high school. I was a sophomore. We had a #1 hit in California when I was a sophomore in high school. Instrumental hit called Latina, right about the time of the Champs and Adventures. That kind of way back then.
We were classified as a surf band. We really weren't. We were really an R&B blues rock band, and Latina really is like a Latin song. It was an instrumental, and they put us in that surf category, which was cool with us. We did all the surf shows,
The Sentinels. Those 4 high school boys saw some pretty big success, opening for acts like the Coasters and the Righteous Brothers. But I wasn't referring to that notoriety as being Johnny's first.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, it's true. Yeah, right. I met Albert Einstein, right.
Tell me about that.
Well, we had a boat in upstate New York, and my mom, I'm half Italian. My mom was Swiss and Austrian, so she could speak fluent German. So she starts towing to this guy in German, and it turns out to be Albert Einstein. He runs out of gas on a lake. So we ended up towing him back, and I'm sitting on his lap. And I put in my book with my first brush with fame and meeting Albert Einstein. How many people get to sit on his lap and meet Albert Einstein? Even though I was 3 years old, my mother told me the story.
So did she keep up contact at all, or it was a one-off?
It was kind of a one-off thing, yeah. People always like to hear that story.
It's a goodie. So your mum was an Austrian immigrant, Dad was a firefighter. You lived in California, and as you said, you started playing in a school band. What happened after that?
Well, I went to the Turtles, which was 8 hit singles, 3 years of that.
Let's talk about the Turtles, because they were one of my first favourite bands ever. How did you get to play with them in the first place?
Well, Gene Clark of the Birds had recommended me to him, and I auditioned for him, and Bones Howell produced Mamas and Papas and other groups. So when he heard me play, he said, "Get that drummer," and the rest was history.
And you were with them for some of their biggest singles. My very favourite one of the Turtles, and I wonder how you feel about it, was Happy Together. That was March in 1967. Tell me about that song.
Well, it was a huge song. As a matter of fact, it was so big when I met Paul McCartney, we knocked Penny Lane at a #1 spot, and it was there for like 8 weeks at #1 spot. And it stylized me as a drummer, what I played on that song. And, of course, the Turtles had a string of 7 hits after that. So it was all good, yeah. You
met Paul McCartney because of that song?
Well, he wanted to meet the Jefferson Starship at Winterland. We went backstage to meet him. When he remembered me. So, oh, yeah, you were in the Turtles. And he remembered that about Happy to get knocking Penny Lane at a #1 spot. He had a great memory on it. It's incredible.
Oh,
McCartney.
Amazing. And you said that playing drums on Happy Together was really the song that stylized you as a drummer. What do you mean by that?
Well, the things I played in the song with my snare drum and bass drum, the things I did set up the verses and chorus, and it stylized me as a drummer. What I played in there was unusual, what I did in there.
It became one of your trademarks to incorporate that stick twirling into your performance, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was one of the stick twirling drummers in the 60s. Myself and Dino Danelli, the Rascals, we were the 2 stick twirling drummers way back then.
Interesting. When I spoke to Carmine Apiece not so long ago, he said that he'd invented that.
No, that's not true. Not at all.
So where did you come up with that?
High school bands. As a matter of fact, I do a stick twirling thing under my arms and stuff that nobody else since I created it. And to this day, it's like, pretty famous. Some guy was on YouTube showing exactly how to do it. He gave me credit for doing it. It was pretty cool.
So is that what you mean when you talk about that stylized your drumming, or is that something separate?
No, what I played on Happy, and She'd Rather Be With Me too, got the number 7 best played song of the 60s on Modern Drummer on She'd Rather Be With Me. I totally turned the beater on, did a double stroke roll, came out of it. Really a fast roll, and most drummers don't play like that. That stylized me as well.
So that's obviously what impressed the members of the Turtles, Howard Kaylan, Mark Volman and Al Nickel. And on that basis, you passed the audition and joined the band and were with them for how long?
4 years and 7 hits.
What was it like in those days? They must have been amazing when you had girls running down the streets after you and teeny boppers everywhere. Tell me a little about how that felt for you.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it's called, rock and roll heaven. It was pretty cool. I mean, you know, when we did Ed Sullivan, I had people, relatives call me as I never knew about. What's the song on Ed Sullivan? You know.
Were you nervous?
No, not at all. I was totally comfortable.
In the 60s, the Ed Sullivan Show served as a platform for one of the most important music revolutions of the 20th century, the British invasion. This fully took off when the Beatles made their TV debut performance in 1964. The British led this new way of music, but it became a so-called rock and roll revolution when dozens of American artists successfully broke into the music scene and challenged the British bands on the charts. One of these bands was the Turtles. They'd changed direction from being a folky rock band to a more psychedelic sound that resulted in their first #1 hit, Happy Together, in '67, followed by a series of hits for the next 3 years. Drummer Johny Barbata had been writing consistently with Howard Kaylan and Mark Volman.
Eleanor was a song we co-wrote together, and that was a huge song. And of course, I co-wrote that song with Howard, and that became a big hit as well. That really stylized me as a drummer as well.
It's not often that drummers in bands get an opportunity to write songs for the band too, but they obviously were very democratic and generous about who could do what.
Yeah, at one point we started writing all of our own stuff, and yeah, that's very true.
Did you get on well with the other guys?
Yeah, I did. I think they might have been a little jealous of me, though, because I seemed to be the most popular. You know, Mark and Howard were heavy set. That's what they called the Turtles. They were like 225 pounds. They were pretty big. Back in rock and roll days, everybody else was like 150 pounds, you know. It's totally a different deal.
That's why they called themselves the Turtles?
Apparently, yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that. So, Eleanor, you co-wrote that. What were you writing about? Who was she?
She was nobody. It was just something we made up.
Okay. Just another love song?
Yeah, basically. Basically, that's what it was.
They were very poppy hits. What were your parameters around writing?
Well, as far as the writing, well, everybody wrote songs, but that was the only one that was really a hit that we wrote. We had to wrote a lot of other songs in the band, like 20 of them or 30 of them. They were on all the albums and stuff. They were good songs, but they weren't hits like Happy Together was, or like Eleanor was, I should say. Were
you restricted to writing 3-minute songs at that time?
Pretty much. I mean, that's what it was. They called it 3-hit wonders. You know, that's everybody kind of wrote. All the hits back then were like 3.5 minutes long. That's all they were.
What sort of reaction were you getting from audiences when you went out to play?
Oh, they loved us. I mean, you know, the Turtles were a smash. I mean, they were a huge group. You know, they're really big. We toured everywhere. We played every kind of venue you can imagine. We even played a place one time. We went in 4 corners out in the field somewhere. So we're playing here, and they pulled up a truck and they put the stage in the back of a big trailer. And by the time 8 o'clock rolled around, the place was packed with like 10,000 people. It came out of nowhere. It was the weirdest gig I ever played.
The late 60s proved to be the Turtles' most successful on the charts. Johnny thinks those years really were the heyday of music, when bands were free to express themselves in any shape or form, and many experimented wildly.
There really wasn't anything like it. It changed. Everything changed. Everything went psychedelic in the 70s, and the music totally changed. But yeah, the 60s were great. Hollywood was a party. Every night was Saturday night there. It was just the way it was, you know. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was friendly. It was really safe. Now it's not so safe, obviously, because it's a lot of crime now. Yeah. Back then it was a lot of fun.
Did all that fame and fortune in those early days change you as a person, or did you manage to keep your feet on the ground?
I always kept my feet on the ground. I think when I got older, I realized really what a big, you know, being all the groups I was with, and I realized what a big pop star I really was, you know, in the eyes of the public.
You didn't feel
playing.
it yourself? I mean, did you still go about doing your...
When I turned the radio on in L.A., I turned the radio on. Happy Together was playing on 3 different stations at the same time. Kept turning the dial and I kept hearing it. I go, wow, guess we have arrived. Before that, we weren't that big, but when Happy Together came out, that really put us over the top. It was a great feeling, and like I said, it opened up the doors to a lot of venues, and like the Turtles did over like 20 TV shows. We did a lot of TV coverage.
And you had your choice of girls, I'd imagine, too?
Yeah, they were there. Every kind you can imagine, from models to actresses to Playboy bunnies, all that, the whole thing.
Sounds like quite the life, doesn't it? Unfortunately, as the times changed, the Turtles' commercial success began to wane. That, combined with management issues, lawsuits and conflicts with their label, led to their breakup in 1970. When the Turtles called it a day, founders Mark Volman and Howard Kalin put their own act together and became famously known as Flo and Eddie. Both then joined Frank Zappa's Mothers of Invention. Drummer Johny Barbata didn't sit still too long either. He was also on his way to bigger and better things.
Well, living in LA was an experience. There was no place like it on the planet. All the music was made there. It was a central place.
That was the end of the 60s. And as 1970 approaches, you're invited to join Crosby, Stills, Nash Young. Tell us about that.
Well, Neil Young fired Dallas Taylor. He said either he goes or I go. So he left. He didn't like Dallas. Dallas, I guess, he was doing junk. He was a heroin addict.
Dallas Taylor had achieved some success with psychedelic rock band Clear Light in the late 60s, but is best remembered as the drummer on Crosby, Stills and Nash's debut album and their follow-up with Neil Young, Deja Vu, in 1970. Dallas also played on Nash's 71 debut Songs for Beginners, on Stephen Stills' first solo album in 1970, as well as on his 71 follow-up. He drummed for Stills' group Manassas in 72 and 73 and played on Stills' 75 solo album. Taylor passed away in 2015. He was 66.
So I got with those guys, did Four-Way Street, did 2 Graham Nash albums. Four-Way Street was a huge album. It's the #1 album of the year, sold 5 million albums. I thought they were the biggest group in the world at the time.
On Four-Way Street, of course, one of the biggest songs on that album was the protest song Ohio, about the Kent State shootings. The music had certainly changed a lot from the music that you were playing with the Turtles just a few years earlier, hadn't it?
Absolutely, totally different bag. I mean, they were really a super group. 4 different, the Hollies, Buffalo Springfield, and the Byrds. They were the first band to get together with 3 different members of different bands, including Neil Young, which they added later. But yeah, a huge group, a super group.
Crosby, Stills and Nash was indeed a folk rock supergroup made up of singer-songwriters David Crosby and Stephen Stills and the English singer-songwriter Graham Nash. When joined by the Canadian singer-songwriter Neil Young, they became Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Best known for their intricate vocal harmonies, their political activism and their tumultuous relationships, CSNY had formed in 1968 after Crosby had been asked to leave the Byrds. Stills' band Buffalo Springfield had broken up and Nash left his band, the Hollies. The group, as we all know, went on to release 8 studio and 4 live albums, with Johny Barbata as a permanent touring member. Whilst in CSNY, the offers kept coming for Johny Barbata.
David Geffen called me in the song and said, hey, there's this new band, they want you to be the drummer. Well, who are they? He said, they're called the Eagles. The Eagles, never heard of them. He leaned in and he said, they're going to really be big and they want you. I said, well, I'm the biggest group in the world and going to do Neil Young's solo album. How much bigger can it get? Anyway, that's a true story. And
amazing.
Don Henley got the gig.
Are you sorry that you didn't take that opportunity and join the Eagles?
No, because I love being in a political group. Playing on Ohio was a smash hit song. And it got to number 7 without like 80% of the airplay because Bill Drake because of the protest, he wouldn't play it. So really, it was the #1 hit single. It got that much airplay. And today, it's like, the Eagles were a pop group. They didn't do anything politically. And CSNY were very political. So was the Airplane.
Right.
Volunteers Are a Miracle, those kind of songs.
So did you feel that it was that you were doing more than simply playing music when you were with CSNY because you were actually making statements and had power to influence outcomes?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I didn't do it, so I basically was the drummer, but yeah, I was all part of that whole thing, yeah, for sure.
It must have been an incredible experience. How did they all get on together? Crosby, Stills, Nash, and later Neil Young.
Well, they went through a lot of changes. I mean, they'd had some problems along the line, but for the most part, they got along. You know, I mean, nothing's going to last forever. Everybody knew that Neil Young broke off, did his solo thing, and Steven did his solo thing, and, you know, Graham did his thing, and same with David. Today, I don't think that they're speaking that much together. And Graham and David, he got me. I can't complain. I mean, he got me on a four-way street, and it's a live album. He's like, and the guy on drums, if you don't know who he plays, his name is Johny Barbata, and he plays his ass off. That's not a live album. Every time you hear that, I get a plug. So he did me good. And he also got me into the Airplane, which led to the Starship.
So you were with CSNY for 2 years, from 1970 through to 72. And in 72, while CSNY were on an extended break, David Crosby introduced you to the band Jefferson Airplane. Why did he do that?
Because they were kind of in a lull, and the Airplane were like a cult band. They were really big in San Francisco. They were huge. It was them and the Grateful Dead. And the Grateful Dead didn't have any gold records, and we had a bunch of them. And they were always jealous of that. But
Really?
to make a long story short, no, I couldn't wait because I kind of felt like I was better than most of the Bay Area drummers, and I couldn't wait to always get a drum solo and be featured in that band. And I couldn't wait to do that, and I got my chance, and it was great.
Jefferson Airplane was one of the pioneering bands of psychedelic rock. Formed in 65, they headlined the Monterey Pop Festival, Woodstock, and the first Isle of Wight Festival. Their 67 breakout album was held up as one of the most significant recordings of the Summer of Love. Airplane's early lineup consisted of Marty Balin, Paul Kantner, Grace Slick, Jorma Kaukonen, Jack Cassidy, and Spencer Dryden on drums. You may remember this song, which is still hailed as one of Rolling Stone's 500 greatest songs of all time. In 1972, Jefferson Airplane effectively split into two groups. Kaukonen and Cassidy moved on to their own band, Hot Tuna, while Slick, Kantner and the remaining members regrouped as Jefferson Starfish.
Paul said, well, what do you think of the name Starship? Oh, man, I love a band called Starship, which was really cool. That was, you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers was number one album of the year, so 5 main albums. And then we had 5 more albums after that. And a lot of stories there.
Go on, give me one.
The Golden Gate Park, we opened, we were the headliner, but Paul said, you know, let the Grateful Dead start, because the fog's going to roll in, and we don't want to be in the fog. And so when we got through, the fog rolled in, but I did a drum solo in front of 150,000 people, and that was really cool, and that was really fun.
It must be difficult as a drummer because you're there to keep the time for everybody, but you don't often get to do drum solos, do you? And I guess that's the whole treat for a drummer, to be allowed to do that solo.
I always did drum solos. I did them in the Turtles. I did them in the CSNY. I couldn't do a drum solo because they were not into that kind of stuff.
Right.
But being a full member of the Airplane, I got a chance to do a drum solo. And one time I was playing with Booker T. We opened up for Carlos Santana. Carlos wanted Booker T to open up for him. Another gig where 150,000. Oh, here's a better one even. We're playing it was called the Snack Concert in San Francisco. And let me see. Every band was there. Carlos Santana, Tower of Power, Neil Young, the band was there. Grateful Dead, Doobie Brothers. I mean, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Once you're going to get to do another drum solo. But Marlon Brando was on stage. He was like, the money was being donated to all the Bay Area groups. Marlon Brando was on stage, and Craig said, why don't you go up and see? He wants to smoke a joint. And I was kind of a little nervous. Nobody was even there to go near Marlon Brando, right? He's sitting behind an amp. I walked up to him and said, hey, well, I got a couple of these. Yeah, sure, like, because he had pipes all over his house. Anyway, we smoked, and the first thing he said to me is, I've never seen anything like this before in my life, you know, playing in front of 150,000 people. Actors don't get in front of that many people.
Yeah.
So he really liked it. He enjoyed the whole thing. I'll never forget that one.
Johny Barbata, is it the ultimate for a drummer to be given an opportunity to play a drum solo?
Yeah. Here's a really good one. I'm playing for Johnny Rivers at it's the 4th of July. It's the Atlanta Pop Festival. There's 150,000 people there. And he opens up. We just followed Alice Cooper at the Pop Festival. It turned into night by the time we started playing. And it's like 104 degrees outside. It's the 4th of July. Anyway, the power goes out. And Johnny Rivers is playing his number one hit, Memphis. In the middle of the song, the power goes out. So I keep playing and all those people started flipping their big lighters on. So a Hugh came over to the stadium. It was the 4th of July. I ended up playing a 45-minute drum solo, which I had never done in my life. I did with the power on. I got out. I was like a freak. But they picked up on the fact it was the 4th of July. I kept doing these drum rolls and making it sound like it was 4th of July. They picked up on it for 45 minutes. And when we got done, right as I do my drum solo, my finale thing of my drum solo, the lights came back on. I do this fast train thing and end my drum solo. And sure enough, the lights came back on. And Johnny Barbata, I got a 5-minute drum applause. You know how long that is?
Oh.
When you're waiting on stage, it's a long applause. He kept talking to me, so my hands were like rubber. So you ready to play? Yeah, I think I can do it. And ended up playing. That was a night. That literally was the night the lights went out in Georgia.
What a great story. That's amazing. You said your hands are like rubber. It's pretty taxing to drum like that for extended lengths of time, isn't it?
Well, because you're using all fours when you sing, too, which I sing a lot of stuff, too. When you use all fours when you're singing, it's like an air high. You're hyperventilating. It's like it's a workout.
Right.
Especially in the Starship and Airplane, they play 2 hour and 45-minute sets. They play long sets. So it's grueling. I probably lost 2 or 3 pounds every time I went on stage.
So who needs a gym when you can be a drummer? Not sure I've ever really appreciated what they're putting into it before. Back in a sec with more. When Jefferson Airplane members Jorma Kaukonen and Jack Cassidy left to pursue their band Hot Tuna, the original members reformed, added a few new players and became known as Jefferson Starship. Their debut album together was Dragonfly in 1974.
Well, I went out to get with the Airplane and the Starship, and I was the only drummer to be in both groups. Red Octopus was the biggest album they've ever had of all the albums they put out. I was with those guys for like 5 years and 5 albums and a bunch of tours and a lot of hit singles. I played on over 100 albums with people like Dr. John, Booker T, Ry Cooder, Lee Michaels, Johnny Rivers, the Everly Brothers, Linda Ronstadt, John Sebastian. It's a pretty privileged thing to play with all these different musicians.
How did you keep yourself fit to play?
Well, I'm always into organic food and stuff. I'm a health freak, I grow all my hair. I might be 10% gray. It's all because of what I eat, and take care of myself. So that's one of the good things.
And you always did that? You never abused your body like so many of the other guys did?
No, I stayed away from hard drugs. I smoked a little pot and drank little red wines. That was healthy and that kept me alive.
That's awesome. Well done.
Everybody else is dead and dying. One of the things I wanted to say, I played on over 100 albums and 20 hit singles, and I was very fortunate. But a studio drummer is considered the cream of the crop, and you get to be part of that. Everybody wants to take you on the road. Everyone wants to use you in the studio. Like I turned down Linda. I came back from my Starship tour. Linda Ronstadt called me, wanted to do a Blue Bayou album. Linda, I'm too tired. Give me a week. No, I'm going to start it tomorrow. I got the time, but so go get Russ Kunkel. And so she did. And this next day, what's his name calls me? Jackson Brown. He wanted me to do his album. I couldn't do that, so I turned on Elvis. I turned on him. I turned on Linda Ronstadt. I turned on Van Morrison, and of course, I turned the Eagles down. I just couldn't do them all. I was just too tired. I couldn't do them all. Yeah. And Van Morrison, he came into my house, found me. I lived out in the woods up in Mendocino. I know he even found my place. I was walking in the house and, hey, damn, I couldn't believe it. Besides Neil Young and Bob Dylan, he was my third favorite guy. He wanted me to go on tour with him and do his album. I'd love to, but I was contractually signed to Graham Nash at the time, so I couldn't really go out and play with him. I told him I'd do it at a later time. And, of course, it never happened, but, it's water under the bridge. What can you do?
Would that one be your biggest regret?
Well, I would have loved to have played for Van. I loved his style, his music. He was great. But can't. Like I said, I couldn't do them all.
You kind of had to pace yourself, huh?
Yeah, you really do. Especially when I came back from those Starship tours, I was tired when Linda Ronstadt called me and Jackson Brown.
I believe your career came to a screaming halt, unfortunately, in 1978. It
did. I was in a bad car wreck, but I bounced back. And first thing I did a Rita Coolidge tour in England, of all places, England and Scotland. It was fun, but all this comes. All my whole life, I've gotten in a book called "The Legendary Life of a Rock Star Drummer." It talks about Albert Einstein, Neil Young.
The Legendary Life of a Rock Star Drummer was originally written in 2005 when Johnny's wife persuaded him that he was part of rock and roll history and really needed to get his experiences down on paper. In the book, he tells stories from his life on the road.
Just started writing down little blots on a piece of paper, and that would become a chapter, and then we kept writing down more chapters. And so I got stories about there when meeting the Beatles when I was in the Turtles. We got off the plane, there was this white Rolls Royce, and we were looking at each other, I wonder who that's for, and the guy holds up a sign, Turtles. We looked at each other, and we ran into the Rolls Royce, and the guys proceeded to tell us that it's the Beatles own this, they're renting it out to you for a week. Well, that night, we went and had a big party that the record company, London Decca, threw for us, and we were drinking these $400 bottles of French red wine, so we got pretty ripped by the time the night was over. We thought we were just going to go to the hotel and crash. And they said, oh, no, we're going to take it to the speakeasy where all the English groups hang out. And they said, oh, that'll be cool, all right. So we go there with our entourage. We walk in, the place is packed. And they usher us up to this back room, and there's these two tables. And I look over at the bar, and there's Graham Nash having a drink with Paul McCartney. Brian Jones was there, had a blonde on each side of him. And then there was Rod Stewart was there. All these French and English models were walking around. And then there was Clapton and Hendrix. They were just coming up the ladder. So we're sitting down having a good time, and all these French models are walking around, English models. We're like in rock and roll heaven. I look over to the right, and there's John Lennon and Ringo Starr, like 3 feet away. So I said to him, hey, there they are. Go see if we can go meet them, And we're like 21 years old. So I'm sitting between Lennon and Ringo, ripped. I didn't know what to say. I was like really nervous. And I realized that they were stoned on acid. And I couldn't believe it. I said, oh, wow, okay, this is a great topic for conversation. So what happened is we have this roadie, Nicky Navarro, came over, and he tripped and spilled a whole pitcher of beer on John Lennon. And I leaned over and said, John, I'm sorry about that. Oh, it's no big deal. At this time, I figured it broke the ice, so I said, well, if it wasn't for you guys, it wouldn't be here. He goes, what do you mean? Well, Beatles, Turtles. And he said, well, everything we got, we stole from Chuck Berry.
The book has just been re-released recently, this time with more pictures and a foreword that states Johny Barbata has performed, recorded and jammed with more rock stars than any other drummer in the history of rock and roll music.
When you think about it, I've been in 4 different groups and played in over 100 albums, and even like Al Blaine, he wasn't in all those groups. He did a lot of stuff, but he wasn't in all these different groups. So I was fortunate enough to be in these groups and do a lot of studio drama as well, which, was it's all in the book.
The book is full of great stories, including Johnny's favourite.
Neil Young calls me up and says, will you come out and play out on my tour? He said, I just fired Kenny Buttrey. I go, what was wrong? Oh. He says, he wasn't playing the bass drum loud enough on Heart of Gold, boom, boom, bap. Well, I said, well, when do you want me out? He says, how about tomorrow in Baton Rouge? I go, tomorrow? Okay, Neil. So I fly in the airplane, get down there, and I had a 20-minute rehearsal and had to play an hour and 45-minute set. That's pressure, with Neil Young. I didn't miss a lick. I got them all right. All the roadies going, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? I said, I was just paying attention,
Rock and roll heaven, those were the days. Oh, I'm so excited to read your book. And you're still making music today?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of drum clinics lined up. I do drum clinics, They're fun to do because they're mainly for drummers. So you get to really play for drummers who really know what you're doing. Uh-huh. Not too many drummers can do drum clinics. You have to be pretty good to do drum clinics. I was blessed with having fast hands, so I'm faster than most drummers. And you have to have speed to be a technician to get around the drums good. And I was fortunately blessed with that. I think I'm as good as I ever was, really. Still have my speed, and I was fortunate enough to have lessons from Buddy Rich, the #1 drummer in the world. That was incredible. He did things nobody else can do. And he saw me one day. We were opening at the Whiskey A Go-Go, and he saw me and said, come on, I'm going to give you some lessons. Also, Johnny Carson was a drummer, and he played, Johnny loved Buddy Rich, and Carson leans over to Buddy Rich, is there anybody like in the drum world? And he said, yeah, I like that drummer in Chicago. With big bands, horns, he liked that kind of thing. Okay. So I like that drummer in the Turtles too, Johny Barbata. The reason he said that, we opened up for I was in a group called L.A. Getaway. We had Joel Scott Hill, Paul Rothschild produced it. We had Dr. John, Booker T, Leon Russell on keyboards on the album. And live, when we're playing, and Buddy Rich saw me, saw me doing a lot of his licks on my drum solo. And the guy gave me my drum and said, you got a lot of balls doing a drum solo on the same stage as Buddy Rich, but you held your own. Buddy Rich saw me and talked to me and said, come on the next day, I'm going to give you some lessons. And I don't think he's ever given anybody a drum lesson, but he liked me. And I met him at the Ashford Towers in Chicago, and he called me down to his room. He showed me this. Ollie Roth was Roger Shinkar's tabla player, fastest hand drummer in the world. And he was showing me this video he did with him. And he had these perfectly rolled joints that he made out of a cigarette thing. He he called them a jack cigarette. He did things other drummers couldn't do. He was really something.
Johny Barbata, do you miss rock and roll heaven, or is it a more mellow Johny Barbata these days?
Well, I'm not out of it. I still play. I play with 2 or 3 different bands. I sit in with them and play. It's fun.
Sounds like your whole life's been pretty much fun.
It's been a good ride. I can't complain.
Good for you. Johny Barbata, thank you so much for your time today. Great hearing your stories.
You bet. My pleasure. Don't forget, it's Johny Barbata, one N in Johnny.
Got it.
Barbata. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Rest in peace, Johny Barbata. He passed away on May 8, 2024. I'll see you next week. Bye now.